Does anyone not know about Elixir? Is this kind of your first night ever hearing about it? Okay, really cool. Were you part of Tech Elevator? Awesome. That'll be a fun experience for you. So my name is Nick. I work with the Scriptdrop team, so I get to work with a lot of them and Elixir and such a lot, which is really, really exciting. So wanted to cover more the business of Elixir, so less of the tech and more just kind of the language, where it's going, where it's been, as well as some anecdotal information that we maybe have based on us using the language and some of our partners starting to use it, which is really exciting. So Elixir is ran atop the Erlang virtual machine. So it was based off of, I call it Erlang 2.0 is what I frequently call it, which is probably not the best explanation. It was used for telecom originally in England. Ericsson invented the language or helped push it with Jose Valum. Also, I have a link to a short documentary about Elixir. It's on YouTube. You can search it. It's about a 15-minute documentary that's really, really interesting on just where the language came from, and what it'll mean for the future. So why use it over another language that is out there that maybe has more documentation, that has collectively just more buy-in from the entire community? Elixir is concurrent and scalable, has very high availability, so very little downtime. Depending on the application that you're writing, that can be less important or more important. With us being in healthcare, that is very, very important. If we kick off a prescription delivery request with one of our pharmacies and the application is down or something like that, it becomes a much larger issue than if we were a cat meme company. If we were a cat meme company, although cats are great and cat memes are even better, that's not as detrimental to your users. Versus we deliver prescriptions to patients that sometimes need them that day. So very important on the high availability. The scalable piece is something that sometimes maybe a startup may not need or care about originally. You just want to get an MVP out and get some user validation and that feedback loop going. But we chose Elixir from a very early stage at Scriptdrop because we felt really strongly, which I guess you could say it's wishful thinking at that point, that we would be very successful, that we needed a scalable application, that we would have millions of transactions coming through our system, and we're certainly trending in that direction. So why you should use and learn Elixir. So it is functional rather than object-oriented. So for someone like me, who I'm self-taught developer, but I am really terrible, the way the code is laid out is easier for me to understand and kind of dig into 3 months later if I look at that code again. Versus sometimes with object-oriented, if I look at my code 3 months later, I'm like, what was I thinking? Or I think someone else wrote it entirely, which I've ran into a lot. Versus functional, it just makes more intuitive sense when you dig into it later. That's what I've experienced. A really quick growing list of companies using it. So I have some examples on the next slide, but one recent, I had an on-site with Kroger about 4 weeks ago. That's one of our clients. And we were presenting just our continued expansion with them, and we found out that Kroger is using Elixir. And they're rewriting some of their chat applications that they have with users on both the grocery side and the pharmacy side in Elixir. Because they've identified that it's more scalable, that they won't have to go through another rewrite 6 months from now or 9 months from now if they see another spike in user activity. That's actually the second pharmacy chain that we've heard that is adopting Elixir. The other being our one of our original big clients, which is Albertsons. So really cool to see that it's not just startups, even though startups typically identify those trends a little earlier than maybe the big corporate entities. But we're starting to see really large enterprises adopt Elixir. which is needed to continue the growth and just the eyes that are coming into the language to highlight all of the strengths. So Slack uses Elixir. Bleacher Report is where I originally found out about Elixir. They had a case study where they rewrote their entire application in Elixir and Erlang, and they went from 150 AWS instances down to 2. And having 2, they actually said in the case study, that was just for redundancy. They only really needed 1. Which to me, when I read that case study, was really illuminating that it showed the type of scalability that you could have with a language and not rely so much on server space and hardware and that type of thing to scale, but more just cleaner code quality. Pinterest also is another one that is frequently cited. They rewrote a lot of their application and cut their servers down by 50%. Which is another really, really big win. Bet365, I just connected with their scale. So they're doing 6 million HTTP requests per second. That is very, very serious scale. At that point, that's where it gets back to being concurrent, scalable, and high availability, of being a very, very important tool and something that you can feel confident that your company made a decision on that tech stack today, that it'll serve you well 3 and 4 years from now. Also, I have a link, so Brian can send out the links later. I can work with him, of just an additional Elixir companies that are kind of starting to come into the fray. One really cool one that I found out about recently is Helium Health. So they are a new EHR that's coming onto the scene. So more of a startup looking to disrupt the EHR space, which really needs disruption. There's a lot of just really large conglomerates that dominate the market and don't innovate very much. HCA, so HCA is the largest hospital group in Nashville. I think they control about 35 or 40% of the hospital beds in the country. They're starting to rewrite a lot of their larger volume enterprise applications into Elixir. So what that'll lead to by them kind of taking the lead and being a leader in the hospital space is a lot of other startups will see validation in originally choosing that language. So it kind of gave us a little bit more validation by HCA making that decision independent of everyone else. Another really cool anecdote I have, one of our very early seed investors is Jumpstart Foundry out of Nashville. So they invest in about 25 to 30 healthcare companies per year. When we originally started writing our tech stack in Elixir 2.5 or 3 years ago, that was the first time the investors at Jumpstart had heard about Elixir. And they connected with it. They had questions about why we would choose that, a kind of nascent language that doesn't have huge libraries, doesn't have thousands of developers on Stack Overflow constantly updating the language. And we walked them through our reasoning. Since then, out of the 150 companies or so that they've funded since 3 years ago, they've found that 17 are using Elixir now. So that's just another piece of starting to see that snowball effect, which will play out well for a lot of us in the room. And it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but 3-4 years from now, Elixir will be what Ruby was very recently in the community. So how we can help. Definitely adding to the open source community. So there, as I touched on, there's not a ton of libraries. So that gives a lot of developers today the ability to kind of become what Matt Jones there in the back has become to the Ruby community. One of those core contributors that is actively making updates and really shaping the future of the language. I think that's an exciting opportunity for anyone. And whether you are just starting out on your development path and you're in Tech Elevator, there's still opportunities for you to contribute to that community, which is really, it's an exciting time to be part of that. Attending meetups, you're all here, so you're actively doing that. Giving talks, so frequently we are looking for speakers each month as we continue to grow this community and really highlight the different really, really smart people within it. And that's something that you do not have to be an expert 10-year developer to give a talk. I am a very, very shitty Python developer. This is not a tech talk, but it's a way to contribute to the community. And it definitely just opens up those conversations for others. Connecting with non-technical decision makers. So that's kind of getting back to those different companies that maybe could use Elixir, that it could solve tech problems that they're facing, scalability issues that they're facing, and really getting out there and being an advocate for the language and its growth and how it could solve some of their issues. And then, of course, what solves everything is building cool shit. So if we're collectively able to do that, that highlights the language. Just building products that ultimately impacts users' lives in a really meaningful way. So we have a Google account where I can pull some of this. So I pulled the interest over time of searches for Elixir over the last several years, and it has went up by thousands of %. So this graph doesn't actually do it justice, but the search volume is going up considerably. And I've found that it really spikes when Stack Overflow puts out some of their reports on kind of the state of the union effectively with the different pay grades for different languages, as well as the best language, worst language. A lot of these will spike on the search results. But it's collectively a great opportunity to be part of the community today, so that everyone in this room 4 years from now can be leaders in the community. So thanks for being part of the journey on the growth of Elixir. And again, sorry for being late on the talk. I had a call that ran over, and the person I was talking to had a ton of really great questions. But my name is Nick, and I will give you the rest of your night back. Thanks for your time.